The bustling market was unlike any the human had ever seen. Floating platforms drifted above, filled with exotic goods from every corner of the galaxy. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the crowds, haggling over prices and exchanging items. The scent of strange foods and spices filled the air, a mix of alien flavors that made his stomach growl. The human, traveler by trade, moved through the market with a sense of purpose. He was no stranger to this place he'd come to barter for a rare artifact from a distant planet, something that could make him a fortune if the deal went well. His boots clicked on the smooth metallic floor as he approached a stall where an alien trader stood, looking him over with sharp, calculating eyes. The trader was a being from a distant star system, tall and thin, with translucent skin that shimmered. In the light, his fingers were long, and his eyes glowed a faint blue, scanning the human as if he were nothing more than a puzzle to solve. The human offered a friendly smile, extending a hand in greeting. "I'm here to negotiate for the artifact," the human said, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. He had dealt with many traders before, but this one seemed different, more calculating, more secretive. The trader's eyes narrowed, and he gave a slight nod. "The artifact is rare, human. Very rare. It has power beyond your comprehension." Human raised an eyebrow. "Power? How so?" The trader's lips twitched into what could almost be called a smile. "I cannot explain fully, but if you wish to buy, you will pay the price, no questions asked." The human hesitated, unsure if he was being tricked. This was a common tactic in markets like this. Sell something mysterious, something alluring, but ask for a high price. He wasn't easily fooled. "I'll pay, but I need to see it first," he said. Crossing his arms, the trader hesitated for a moment before turning, signaling to a nearby assistant. The assistant, a short, squat creature with large eyes, scurried to the back of the stall, returning with a small box. It was wrapped in layers of protective material, but the human could feel the weight of it. The box was old, the edges worn, and there was a strange symbol etched into its surface, symbol he didn't recognize. "This is it," the trader said, holding out the box. "But remember, the price is steep." The human eyed the box carefully, then glanced back at the trader. "How steep?" The trader's smile deepened. "A price you will not easily forget." Before the human could respond, something caught his eye. Across the market, near the edge of the crowd, a figure stood out. It wasn't the typical alien being one might expect to see in such a place. This one was different, more primal, more wild. She stood tall, her broad shoulders and strong frame making her an imposing presence. Her skin was covered in scars, and her eyes were a piercing yellow, almost glowing with intensity. She was watching him at first. The human thought it was just his imagination. But no, she was staring directly at him, her gaze unblinking and intense. He shifted uncomfortably, his hand instinctively brushing against the pouch at his side, checking that everything was still in place. He had no idea who she was, but there was something about her that made him uneasy. She looked like a warrior. But not just any warrior, a hunter. Perhaps the trader noticed the human's distraction and followed his gaze. "At her," the trader said with a smirk. "The Beastwoman, she is known in these parts." The human's eyes narrowed. "Beastwoman?" The trader nodded. "Warrior from a distant planet. She belongs to a clan that rules these lands. Few dare approach her, and fewer still survive her tests." The human raised an eyebrow. "Tests?" The trader's expression darkened. "You'll find out soon enough if you're foolish enough." To get involved with her, the Beastwoman took a step forward, her eyes still locked on the human. She was moving closer, her every stride purposeful, her body language speaking of a life spent in constant readiness. The market seemed to grow quieter as she approached, the crowd instinctively parting to make way for her. The human's heart skipped a beat. He'd encountered many dangerous beings in his travels, but there was something about this one that sent a shiver down his spine. She didn't just look dangerous, she looked like she belonged to a world far more brutal than the one he knew. She stopped just a few paces away, her gaze never leaving him. The air between them was charged with an unspoken tension, like the calm before a storm. The human found himself unable to look away from her yellow eyes. She was like a predator watching its prey. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Beastwoman spoke, her voice low and gravelly. "Human," she said, her tone not friendly, but commanding. "You are in my territory. You speak to the traitor without paying the proper respect." As the human blinked, taken aback by her sudden words. "Respect." To steady his voice, "I'm just negotiating for an artifact." "Oh, don't know what you mean." Her lips curled into a snarl. "You speak to him as if you own this place. But you do not." The crowd was silent, watching intently, unsure whether to intervene. The traitor seemed unaffected, as though this sort of confrontation was nothing new. Before the human could respond, the Beastwoman stepped forward with lightning speed, her powerful arm lashing out and grabbing him by the wrist. The human barely had time to react before she brought her teeth to his arm. Biting into the flesh with a savage growl, the crowd gasped. The human yelped in pain, stumbling back as the Beastwoman released her grip, her yellow eyes still watching him intently. His arm was bleeding, but it was nothing serious. He glanced at the traitor, whose expression remained unreadable, and then at the crowd, which stood in stunned silence. The Beastwoman stepped back, still watching him. "You are weak," she growled, her voice like the rumble of distant thunder. "You have not learned the rules." The human, though in pain, stood tall. Was no stranger to fights, and this was just another challenge. But there was something about the Beastwoman's eyes. The way she had bitten him there was a challenge. In her actions, this wasn't just an attack. This was a test. The human stood still, his eyes fixed on the Beastwoman who had just bitten him. The sharp sting from the wound throbbed in his arm, but his mind was focused on her. The crowd had fallen silent, all eyes on the two of them, the traitors, the passers-by, and the various alien species standing around had stopped what they were doing. It was as if time had slowed, the tension in the air so thick you could feel it pressing down on your chest. The Beastwoman had stepped back, her fierce yellow eyes never leaving the human. She didn't seem satisfied, nor did she seem angry. She was curious. Her lips curled into a slight, almost imperceptible smile. But it wasn't the smile of someone who was pleased. It was the smile of a hunter sizing up its prey. The human's pulse quickened. He had faced danger before, but this was something different. This wasn't just a fight or a battle, it was a test. He could feel it deep in his bones. The challenge she had thrown down. And he knew without a doubt that this moment would change everything. Wiped the blood from his arm with his sleeve, the movement deliberate. He didn't want to show weakness. Not in front of her, and not in front of the watching crowd. But the sharp pain in his arm reminded him that she had meant business. She hadn't bitten him out of random malice. This was a calculated act. "Did you do that?" the human asked, his voice steady. But there was an edge to it now. He wasn't backing down. The Beastwoman's head tilted slightly, her eyes narrowing as she considered his question. She was silent for a moment, the only sound in the market the distant murmur of the crowd. Then her voice broke the stillness. "You spoke to the traitor, as though you owned the place. Showed no respect for the customs here," she said, her tone low and commanding. The human's brow furrowed. "I wasn't trying to disrespect anyone. I was just negotiating." She stepped closer, her body towering over him. Despite her wild appearance, her movements were graceful, controlled. "Negotiation is for equals," she said, her voice like a growl. "You are not an equal here." The human took a step back, not out of fear, but because he understood the weight of her words. She was making it clear that he didn't belong in this world, at least, not yet. The market had its rules, its hierarchy, and he had just learned that he was far from the top. "You didn't have to bite me," he replied, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He wasn't about to let her intimidate him. There's always a better way to settle things. Her lips curled into a sharp grin. "What would you suggest, human?" The human hesitated for a brief moment, then looked around at the onlookers. They were still watching, waiting for something to happen, but none of them dared to interfere. It seemed that whatever happened next would be between him and the Beastwoman. There were no rules here, no laws to protect him. The only law was power, and it was clear that she held it. Ska, I'd suggest we talk, he said. I don't want to make enemies, but I also don't want to be bitten every time I speak to someone. The Beastwoman didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied him, her yellow eyes scanning him from head to toe. It was something calculating in her gaze, like she was trying to figure him out. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a leader. And leaders didn't make decisions lightly. The human took another deep breath. Look, I know I'm not from around here, he said, his voice now calm, but I'm just here to make a deal. I didn't come here to step on anyone's toes. Duh. Beastwoman remained silent, her gaze unwavering. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke again, her voice softer now, though still tinged with authority. You are not in your world anymore, human, she said. Here, we don't show weakness. Here, strength rules all. You will learn. That quickly, the human swallowed hard, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what she meant, but he could sense the underlying warning in her words. This wasn't just about him being new to the planet. It was about surviving in a world where only the strong thrived. He would have to prove himself, and he knew that wasn't going to be easy. I understand, he said, though he wasn't entirely. Sure he did. But biting me, that's not strength. That's just aggression. The Beastwoman chuckled, the sound low and dangerous. You mistake aggression for power? Human. I bit you to show you where you stand. But I'm not a mindless beast. I'll give you a chance. The human raised an eyebrow, intrigued. A chance? She nodded. Yes. You'll prove yourself, or you'll leave this market with nothing. The choice is yours. The human took a moment to think. This was his chance, he realized. The Beastwoman wasn't trying to kill him, she was testing him, pushing him to see if he could survive in her world. He had to decide quickly how to respond, and he knew there was no room for hesitation. How do I prove myself? He asked, his voice firm. The Beastwoman's smile widened. You'll fight, not me, she added quickly, noticing the human's expression. But others in the market. Show them you have strength. Then, and only then, will you earn the right to negotiate. The human's heart raced. This was it. His first test in a world he didn't understand. But he wasn't about to back down. If he was going to survive here, he would have to fight. And he would fight like he had never fought before. All right, he said, his voice steady. I'll fight. The Beastwoman's eyes sparkled with approval. Then prepare yourself. The market will be your battleground. As the Beastwoman turned away and began walking through the crowd, the human watched her. Go, his mind spinning with the weight of the challenge ahead. He had no idea who or what he would be fighting, but one thing was clear. He had to win. There was no other option. The crowd parted as she moved, and the human followed. He was ready for whatever came next, ready to prove himself in the only way that mattered here through strength. The human followed the Beastwoman through the crowded market, his mind racing. He had agreed to fight, but now that the moment was drawing near, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stepped into a world he didn't fully understand. The market, which had seemed chaotic and alive only moments ago, now felt like a battlefield. The air was thick with anticipation, and the quiet hum of whispers echoed in the background. As the Beastwoman led him deeper into the market, the crowd began to part, forming a circle around them. The human's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the eyes of the traders, the aliens, and the onlookers on him, but he dared not look. Around, he had to stay focused. The stakes were higher than he had ever known, and failure wasn't an option. The Beastwoman stopped in the center of the clearing, turning to face him. Her eyes were still filled with that piercing intensity. But there was something else now, something almost respectful. She didn't look at him like prey anymore. She looked at him like an opponent. You fight to prove yourself, she said, her voice echoing in the quiet of the market. But remember, you are not fighting for a prize. You're fighting for respect. Fail, and you will be nothing here. The human nodded, his hands clenched into fists. He had no idea what kind of opponent he would face, but he knew that he couldn't. Back down now. His pride and his very survival were on the line. You fight well, or you die trying, she added, her voice dropping low like a growl. She looked over his shoulder, signaling to someone in the crowd. This is your first opponent. A man stepped forward from the crowd, his muscles rippling under his skin. He was tall, even taller than the human, and his broad shoulders made him look like a wall of muscle. He had the look of someone who spent his life in combat, a fighter through and through. The human could feel the weight of the challenge in the air as the man cracked his knuckles, his gaze locked on him with cold determination. "Do you accept?" Beastwoman asked, her voice low, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is, test, fight or leave." The human swallowed hard but straightened his back. There was no turning back now. Didn't care how big or strong the other man was. He had no choice. Had to fight. "I accept," he said firmly, his voice steady, despite the nervous tension crawling up his spine.
Ow!
The crowd stirred, their eyes flicking between the two men. It was clear that this fight wasn't just about who won or lost. It was about respect, power, and survival. The human could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him, but he refused to show fear. He would not give the Beastwoman or the onlookers the satisfaction. Without another word, the Beastwoman stepped back, allowing the two fighters to square off. The man in front of him cracked his neck, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "You sure you want to do this?" the opponent asked, his voice deep and menacing. "You don't look like much." The human didn't respond. Instead, he focused on his opponent, trying to block out everything else. His breathing slowed, his senses sharpened. He had been in fights before, but this one felt different. There was no room for mistakes, no margin for error. The first move came fast. The opponent lunged forward with a powerful fist aimed directly at the human's face. The human reacted just in time, ducking under the punch and feeling the air rush above him. His heart raced. Couldn't let the other man land a hit. Needed to stay one step ahead. The opponent was strong, no doubt, but the human had agility on his side. He wasn't the biggest, but he had quick reflexes, and that was his advantage. He spun around, narrowly avoiding another punch, and kicked the man in the side. The blow landed with a dull thud, but it wasn't enough to knock him down. The crowd around them erupted into cheers and gasps, the onlookers clearly enjoying the spectacle. The Beastwoman watched silently from the sidelines, her eyes never leaving the human. He could feel her gaze, and it only made him more determined to prove himself. His opponent growled in frustration, wiping a trickle of blood from his lip. "You're faster than I thought," he muttered, his voice full of annoyance. The human didn't respond. He focused on the fight, watching his opponent's every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. The man came at him again, throwing punches with brute strength, but the human dodged each one. It was clear now this fight wasn't about outmuscling the opponent. It was about endurance, patience, and finding the perfect opening. Then it came. The opponent overextended with a wild punch, leaving himself open for just a second. The human didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, grabbed the man's arm, and twisted it behind his back. With a swift motion, he brought the opponent to the ground, pinning him there. The crowd went silent. The Beastwoman's gaze flickered with something like approval, though she remained stoic. The human held the opponent down, his breathing heavy, his arms straining with the effort. "Do you submit?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. This wasn't a game to him anymore. This was survival. The man struggled beneath him, but it was clear he was losing strength. The final grunt, he stopped fighting and nodded reluctantly. "I submit," he said through gritted teeth. The human slowly released him, standing up and taking a step back. The opponent rolled to his side, breathing heavily but defeated. The Beastwoman stepped forward, her expression unreadable. At the human for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "You've earned your place here," she said. The crowd erupted into applause, some of the traders exchanging looks of surprise and respect. Now the human had proven himself, and in this world, that was everything. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, still catching his breath, but a sense of accomplishment washed over him. He had done it. He had fought and won. But the Beastwoman's words lingered in his mind. For now, that meant the battle wasn't over. Not by a long shot. As the crowd began to disperse, the human met the Beastwoman's gaze once more. He'd proven himself in the arena, but now the real challenge was just beginning. The game had changed, and he was ready to play. The human stood in the center of the market, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. The fight had been grueling, and his body ached from the exertion. But the sense of victory, the satisfaction of proving himself, was worth every bruise and cut. The crowd had dispersed, some of the traders returning to their stalls, while others watched him with newfound respect. The Beastwoman, however, had not moved. She still stood at the edge of the clearing, her piercing yellow eyes fixed on him, studying him as if he were something to be understood, not just an opponent. The human wiped the sweat from his brow and glanced around. He could feel the eyes of the market still on him, lingering in awe and curiosity. He had fought for respect, and he had earned it. Or so he thought. The Beastwoman took a slow step forward, her massive frame cutting through the crowd. She didn't speak at first, but the air around her was thick with something unspoken. Was more than just a warrior. She was a leader, someone with power. She had proven it when she had bitten him, and she had proven it again in the arena when she stood back and watched him fight. "You fought well," she said at last, her voice low, almost thoughtful. There was no hint of mockery, only the weight of acknowledgement. The human nodded, trying to steady his breathing. "Thanks." "It wasn't easy." "It never is," she replied, her gaze never wavering from his face. "But that's not enough here. Fight is only a test of your strength, not your true worth. Can be measured by power, but true worth is something more." The human frowned slightly. He wasn't sure if he fully understood what she meant, but the way she said it made him feel like he had just completed the first step of a much larger challenge. And now that he had earned her respect, he needed to know what came next. "What now?" he asked. "I fought, and I proved myself. I don't want to be a part of some endless battle. I came here for something simple, to make a deal." The Beastwoman's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile. "You think the world works like that? That everything has a simple answer? Nothing here is simple." But your fight was just the beginning. To truly survive in this world, you need more than strength. You need to understand the people you're dealing with and the world you're in. The human's mind raced. It wasn't just about being strong. He had suspected as much, but hearing it from her confirmed it. He would need to do more than just fight to get what he wanted. He would need to learn, adapt, and find his place in a world that didn't work like his own. The Beastwoman continued, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "I can help you. If you want it." The human's heart skipped a beat. He had not expected that. After everything that had happened, after the fight and the pain, she was offering him something help. But why? Was it just because he had earned her respect in the arena? Or was there something more to this? "Help me," he repeated, a bit skeptically. "Why?" "Because," she said, her voice steady, "you've proven yourself. But there's more to this world than fighting. There's more to power than brute strength. And you need to understand it if you want to survive here. Your fight was just a small part of what's coming. I know the way the galaxy works. The market here is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. If you want to make it, if you want to get what you're after, you'll need allies, knowledge, and strategy." The human stood silent for a moment, processing her words. This wasn't just about survival, it was about navigating a complex, dangerous world. He had thought he could simply walk in, make a deal, and leave. But now, he realized, he was in. Over his head, "And what do you want in return?" he asked. There was always something to be gained in these situations, especially when it involved someone like her. The Beastwoman's eyes flickered for a brief moment, as if weighing her answer. "What I want is simple," she said. "I want you to prove you can think beyond the fight. Show me that you can be more than just a warrior. Help me with something that is far greater than just this market. If you do that, I'll teach you what you need to know." The human's curiosity piqued. "What's the bigger picture? What are you asking me to do?" Her gaze hardened. "There are forces in this galaxy that no one can control. The market is just a small part of a much larger empire, one that is constantly shifting, changing. The warriors here, the traders, the factions, they're all just pieces in a game. And you, human, are a wild card. You have the potential to be something more than just another pawn in that game." The human took a deep breath, trying to make sense of it all. He had come here expecting a simple trade, but it seemed that he had stumbled into something far more complex, something dangerous. He didn't know if he was ready to dive into this galaxy-spanning conflict, but he knew that turning back wasn't an option. It's not anymore. "I'll help you," he said, his voice firm. "But I need to know what I'm getting into. I didn't come here to be anyone's pawn, and I won't be used." The Beastwoman regarded him for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Good, you're starting to understand. You won't be a pawn. You'll be an ally. But the first step is to prove yourself, not just in strength, but in wisdom. And that's something no one can teach you overnight." She stepped back, her eyes still watching him carefully. "The game has just begun, human. If you want to play, you'll need to be ready for what's coming. You'll need to trust me, because the path ahead is dangerous. But if you make the right moves, you just might win." The human nodded, his heart pounding with anticipation. He had fought, he had survived, but now the real challenge was beginning. He had no idea what he had just agreed to, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to be a simple trade, and it wasn't going to be easy. The Beastwoman turned and began to walk away, leaving him standing there, unsure of what to expect next. But one thing was clear: his journey had just begun, and the path ahead would be anything but predictable. The human stood alone, in the middle of the bustling market, the words of the Beastwoman echoing in his mind. He had agreed to help her, but he still had no idea what exactly he was getting into. The weight of the situation settled on him like a heavy cloak. And he knew that whatever came next would require more than just strength. It would require intelligence, cunning, and trust. But trust wasn't something he gave easily, especially not to someone like her. The Beastwoman was powerful, yes, but what did she really want from him? He had no answers, only questions. And now it seemed he was about to face the first real test of his new path. As the crowd continued to move around him, the human felt the eyes of the market on him once again. It wasn't just curiosity this time. People were watching, waiting to see what he would do next. He had fought for respect, but now he had to prove that he could hold on to it. The Beastwoman had told him to prepare, to learn the game, and to prove that he could think beyond brute force. But where did he begin? What did she mean by the game? What exactly was he being asked to do? He wasn't sure, but he knew that he couldn't do this alone. He needed information, allies, and most importantly, he needed to understand the situation he had found himself in. The human turned and made his way to the edge of the market. There, a small, unassuming stall sat tucked between two larger, more extravagant ones. The stall was run by an old alien with gray skin and multiple eyes, each one blinking in a different direction. The alien's name was Tar, and he was known for trading in rare information. If there was one person who could give him the answers he needed, it was Tar. "Dar," the human greeted the old alien as he approached the stall. "I need your help." The alien looked up, his multiple eyes narrowing in suspicion. "What do you want, human?" "I don't deal in goods. I deal in secrets." "I need to know about the Beastwoman," the human said, lowering his voice so that only Tar could hear. "What is she really after? What's the game she's talking about?" Tar's eyes twinkled with interest, and he motioned for the human to come closer. "Ah, the Beastwoman. You've gotten yourself tangled up in a web, haven't you?" He gave a low, knowing chuckle. "She is more than just a warrior. She is the leader of her clan. Yes, but she is also a key player in a much larger conflict. Conflict that stretches across the galaxy." The human leaned in, eager to hear more. "What kind of conflict?" "One that involves the powerful factions of this galaxy," Tar said, his voice quiet but intense. "The Beastwoman's clan is one of the most respected and feared. But there are other clans, other forces at play, some more dangerous than others. She's not just protecting her people, human. She's protecting something far more valuable. And she needs someone like you to help her." The human frowned. "Me? Why?" Tar leaned in closer, his voice dropping even lower. "Because you are a wild card. You are different. You're a human. And you have the potential to turn the tide in this war. But only if you play your cards right." The human took a step back, trying to process what Tar was saying. You're telling me that this war's bigger than just the market? Bigger than just survival here? Much bigger, Tar confirmed. You see, human, the Beastwoman, is part of a larger struggle, one that involves the control of entire star systems. She is a leader in a war that spans galaxies, a war between factions that seek to dominate and control. But there is something more to it, something the Beastwoman knows, something she's been hiding. The human's mind raced. This wasn't just about the market or a simple trade. This was a galactic conflict, one that could shape the future of entire worlds, and he had somehow found himself in the middle of it. What's she hiding? The human asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ah! Tar's eyes glinted with a mix of caution and excitement. She's not just a warrior, human. She's a key player in a secret alliance. It's an alliance that could change the balance of power across the galaxy. She's not ready to reveal all her cards yet, and that's why she needs you. She's testing you to see if you can handle the truth. The human felt his heart skip a beat. This was bigger than anything he had imagined. He had thought he was simply helping a warrior survive, but now he realized that the stakes were much higher. How do I fit into all of this? He asked, his voice shaking slightly from the weight of the revelation. Tar's eyes softened, almost sympathetically. You will have to choose human. The Beastwoman will ask you to fight for her cause, but she will also ask you to make a choice. A choice that could mean the difference between life and death, not just for you, but for countless others. The human swallowed hard. He had no idea what he was getting into, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. He'd already committed himself to the Beastwoman, and now he had to decide whether he would stand with her or walk away from everything he had fought for. Is there anyone I can trust? The human asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Tar paused for a moment, his many eyes studying the human carefully. Trust is a rare commodity in this galaxy, human. But there are others who may help you. Some you'll meet along the way. But be careful. Times like these, trust is both a weapon and a weakness. The human nodded, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on him. He had no idea what was coming next, but he knew he had to be ready. The Beastwoman had already changed his life, and now the galaxy itself seemed to be on the line. Thank you, Tar, the human said, turning to leave. Remember? Human? Tar called after him, his voice low. The game has just begun, and the true battle is yet to come. With that, the human left the stall, his mind racing with the weight of the truth he had just learned. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. His path had just taken a dangerous turn, and there was no turning back. The human walked away from Tar's stall, his mind spinning with everything he had just learned. The marketplace felt different now, less vibrant, more oppressive. The weight of the galactic conflict that Tar had mentioned hung over him like a storm cloud. It wasn't just a matter of surviving anymore, it was a matter of choosing sides, a matter of deciding who and what he would fight for. He had thought this journey would be simpler trade, a few deals, and he'd be on his way. But now he understood that nothing was simple in this galaxy. The Beastwoman wasn't just a warrior. She was a leader in a larger, far more dangerous game, and he had just stepped into the middle of it, walked through the market. He couldn't help but glance over his shoulder every few seconds. He had no idea who might be watching him, who might be listening. Tar had said it himself. Trust was a rare commodity here, and if he was going to survive, he needed to be careful. The human's thoughts were interrupted as he reached the edge of the market he was about to step into, the narrow alleyway that led to the place where the Beastwoman had said to meet him, when a familiar voice called out from behind him, "Human." He turned to see the Beastwoman approaching, her presence commanding as usual. She walked with a confident, almost predatory grace. Her eyes locked onto him as if she had already made up her mind about something. There was no warmth. In her gaze only, the cold focus of someone used to making decisions that affected lives. Beastwoman. The human greeted her, trying to keep his voice steady, despite the nervous tension in his chest. He hadn't expected her to find him so soon, but he knew there was no avoiding this moment. He had to face her, and whatever questions she had, he would have to answer. "You met with Tar," she said, her voice calm, but there was an edge too. I hope you understand now. This is more than just a simple trade. You're involved in something much bigger. You're involved in a war." The human nodded, trying to keep his expression neutral. "I know. You've learned what you needed to know," she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. He hesitated for a moment, wondering how much to tell her. He knew she was testing him, but he didn't want to reveal everything just yet. "I know enough," he said. "Enough to understand that this is bigger than I thought, but I need to know more. What exactly do you want me to do? What role am I supposed to play in this war?" The Beastwoman didn't answer right away. She paused, studying him as if deciding whether to reveal something important. Finally, she spoke, her tone quiet but firm. "I want you to help me protect my people, protect the clan, and the land we control. But there's more to it than just that. Forces I'm up against aren't just fighting for control of this planet. They're fighting for control of the galaxy. And I need someone who can think beyond just battle tactics. Someone who can make decisions that could change the outcome of this war." The human swallowed hard. The weight of her words settled on him, and he felt the gravity of the decision he was about to make. He had never intended to get involved in something like this. He had come to the market to make a trade, to secure his future. But now he was being asked to take part in a galactic conflict. He had no choice but to face the truth. This was his moment, the one where he would have to choose. To stand with her and help her fight for control, or to walk away and leave everything behind. But there was no easy way out. No matter what, his life had changed forever. "I didn't come here to be a soldier," the human said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty churning inside him. "But I came here for something, and I'm not leaving without it. So, if you want me to help you, I need to know one thing. What's the real reason you're asking for my help? What's at stake?" The Beastwoman studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "There's a power in this galaxy that no one can control. An ancient power older than the factions fighting for control now. And if it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything we know. The enemy we're facing isn't just after territory. They're after that power. And if they get it, they'll use it to dominate the entire galaxy. It will be too late to stop them." The human's heart raced. This was more than just a war. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy itself. The stakes were higher than he could have imagined. "Why me?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "Why? Did you choose me to help you? I'm just one person. I'm not a warrior like you. I don't have special abilities. I'm just human." The Beastwoman's eyes softened slightly. "That's exactly why I chose you. You're not like the others. You have something they don't, something no one else has. You're a human. And the key to winning this war might just lie in what makes you different from everyone else. But you'll have to prove it." The human felt a mixture of fear and determination rise inside him. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what she was asking of him, but he knew that walking away wasn't an option. Not anymore. "So what's next?" he asked, his voice steady. "You fight with me," she said. "You'll face challenges, and you'll have to make decisions that will test your very soul. But if you want to protect this galaxy, if you want to protect your future, you'll need to choose your allies wisely and prepare yourself for what's coming. This isn't just a fight for survival, it's a fight for the future." The human nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something far bigger. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew one thing: his journey was just beginning. "I'm in," he said, his voice resolute. "Let's fight." The Beastwoman gave a slight nod, her expression hardening once again. "Good. Prepare yourself. The war starts now." As the human followed her into the shadows of the marketplace, he knew that the choice he had made would shape the course of his life forever, and there was no turning back now.